Up next, Christopher Jimison is the CTO of Forte. He will discuss how Forte is doing some incredible work in the tokenization space within gaming.
Hey guys, well thanks so much. I know it's been a great Apex so far, and hopefully everybody's not a little too hungover from last night's party. But we'll get into it with how Forte is trying to unlock token economics, and we're really focusing on games. So I like to think about this as, you can imagine a classroom, the teacher goes and says, hey kids, let's build a game. What do you want to work on? And everybody gets super excited, and they're saying graphics and gameplay and animation. And then over to the side corner, we have two kids that are like, well, what's left? Economics and payments. Thus begins the ballad of Alice and Bob and how they became the primary actors in every single transaction documentation you read in crypto. But really, economics and payments has a very large impact into game design. So when you kind of look at the history of games, especially from the perspective of payments, you can see that they're really tied into how games are made and what the game actually is. So if you go back into the 1980s, what we saw was arcades were the major game consumption mechanism. And these games were actually built so that arcade operators would buy them and then monetize to their players for 25 cents for like a 2-minute game session. And this was to allow them to kind of cycle through their players. Moving into the 90s, what we see is consoles became a big thing, and they're able to deliver this experience at home. But more importantly, the game design changed because, or not just because, but one of the factors is that you're now paying $50 for what is basically 10 hours of gameplay. But the game now can facilitate richer stories, RPGs, strategy games became a really big component of this. As we move into the 2000s, online payments became very accessible, both to the developers as well as the users themselves. So now I can enter in my credit card information, I can have a monthly bill being charged from like $10 to $15, but the game can now access and have new content, communities, a lot of exciting features that they don't have to worry about. Did I get the check mailed to me this month? Do I need to turn off this player's account? They could just do an automatic bill. The 2010 times, we really started to see mobile explode. But the same is true on PCs with products like Steam, where you create an account, you register your credit card, and then inside the game experience, you could be billed and charged for different items. You didn't have to leave the game experience anymore. It was all baked into a nice product that was easily accessible for the users. Now, Forte's position is, into the 2020s, we feel like Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies is going to be the major mechanism for a lot of these new types of games. But what those game designs are, hey, we're not really sure yet. But that's also what makes this so exciting. But one of the big things is that payment channels need to meet users' expectations. If you look at what the current user is kind of dealing with now, it's, hey, I set up my phone, I added my credit card to it, I go to the store, find a cool game, maybe I pay for it, maybe it's free, download it, I'm playing the game, there's some cool item I want to buy, transaction done, I'm happy, and I'm getting right into the action. But if you look at a lot of the crypto models, there's just a lot of barriers to entry. The first thing you're going to have to do, well, if I've never even heard of crypto before, I now have to go out and create a wallet, learn about what a wallet even is. Okay, I got my wallet, I have to fund my wallet. That typically means going to exchange, entering KYC information, doing an ACH transfer. Okay, great, I finally got through that part. I'm ready to actually buy something in this game. Well, I'm now going to have to scan a QR code, copy and paste maybe an address, and then figure out this whole gas thing. What is gas? I don't know. So all this just adds friction upon friction upon friction for a user base that isn't necessarily crypto savvy. And then the worst thing is after they make this payment, gone through all this hassle, especially if you're on some other blockchains, it could be a very long wait time where they're used to things finalizing in seconds, we're now talking minutes or more. So what Forte is really focused on is building out an end-to-end solution to enable enterprises to easily build and scale massive token economics in games. Well, what does that mean? Well, we really look at it as a kind of a multi-phased approach, but the first is to really start to provide that seamless UI. We need to have liquidity for these players so that they can feel like as they're putting currency into the game, they can take it out, and it becomes a very fluid motion for them. But also compliance is a very heavy aspect to this. So the first thing that we kind of look at is embeddable game wallets. How do we get the crypto experience to be similar to what the player's expectations are? Jump into the game, be able to access it, but then still manage that regulation where I can buy items, I can build up currency, but then also we can handle KYC and other things as these values continue to grow. Additionally, economics in games are an art, not a science. There's so many factors into what causes your game to have a strong economy inside of it. It could be the balancing, the tuning of the assets. It could be the price points you have. It could be just a general gameplay of how often do you use this item and what can you do with it in the game. So all that reflects that developers need time from when they first launch the product, get it into the hands of these players, and then really figure out how to tune it to make it the most fun experience. So we really focus on how do they have that opportunity to soft launch their game, seed their economy, but then roll it out into more public blockchains. Additionally, one of the big pieces that we like to think about is what we call the network effects flywheel. And while I'm not going to read this whole slide to everybody, but I like to kind of give a general example of how this can work using a real-world scenario. So if you think about COVID times, a lot of us took up hobbies. This hobby could have been knitting, for example. So I'm knitting some sweaters, some socks, some hats. I'm doing all this stuff. And I have a whole catalog of items that I've learned how to do. And I'm like, I really don't want to keep this junk in my house. I want to get rid of it. What do? Well, I can go to Etsy. And then I could sell these items on Etsy, and all of a sudden, my hobby, my form of relaxation or entertainment, just became a revenue-generating source for me as a player. This same example can be applied into the digital game space as well. For example, I might be a player, I go to the marketplace, I buy some sword, I make my payment for it, the developer gets a cut of that, and I go out on my adventure. And in the course of my adventure, maybe I slay the evil dragon. And in doing so, my sword becomes Excalibur, this really important, critical thing because not everybody sees the evil dragon, but it affects both its stats, its interest for the player base. It could be a item of real acquisition. And I could say, you know what? I'm going to take it back to the marketplace, put it up for sale, and maybe I get $100 for it. So that's a turn in the flywheel. Because my activities, my time, increase the value of this item. The developer wins because they now get a percentage of the cut for that sale. And then the purchaser wins because they didn't have to go out and spend like 2 days running around in the forest trying to find a dragon. But this same, that's just one turn in the wheel. The wheel can continue to be expanded upon and grown. So imagine the developer now has a tournament where you can pay money, win this tournament, and get more money out of it. But you have more than just that one single activity. You now have the ability to say, well, great, I'm a championship winner. What if I have a jobs board in my game that I can advertise 50 coins for half an hour, and I'll come play this game with you? The person who just sold that Excalibur, they can now hire this person to teach them how to play the game better. This is how Forte is trying to help games not just become successful crypto economies, but also they can become platforms and revenue generation systems for both the developers and the players themselves. So really all this is to say is that as we all talk about the hype of NFTs, how cool they are, how expensive they are, it's just the beginning. It's the surface layer replacing your payment rails with crypto is just a start. It needs to get much deeper into the game to really unlock that massive potential. So really how XRPL helps us excel, well, we use a kind of a whole suite of Ripple products. Whether it's the ledger that gives us low-cost transactions, fast finality, and really just simple and easy to use APIs. This is great for us from a developer perspective. ILP, we use quite a bit to achieve packetized payments, settlement systems to help reduce the cost. But finally, there's PayString. And PayString is great because it really starts to get back to that initial argument, which is meeting user expectations, having identity assigned as compared to an address, a crypto address. I'm now Chris at Forte.io. So yeah, that's my talk. I just want to say thanks so much for listening to me. I hope everybody had a fantastic Apex, and look forward to seeing you all later.